So now we're on Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis, and we're starting the Mishnah. And this Mishnah is going to deal with the issue of Shemos, especially in the cases where the man has many names and a woman has many names. And anyone who studies Silchas Gerushin, I mean, these are the major sugyas about how to write a get. For Rishona, there was the Takanas Chachama of Gamliel Azakim, but before that, Hayimishane Shmo Ushma. And that means that he would write only one name in the get, and that's the name that he's called in the Makom Ksiva. So the get was written here, and he has a name here. It was delivered there, and there he has a different name. They wrote the name B'Makom Haget, Ksivas Haget, and that was it. Shemi Ro v'Shemi Ra. They would write the name of the city where the get was written, and not the name of the city where the get was delivered. Hiskin, Rabban Gamliel, Azokin. Now, this is a very strange situation, because if, let's say, the get was written in New York and it was delivered in Chicago, and she's going to take out the get, and the get says New York and not Chicago, then people over there in Chicago are going to assume that this is not a right get. This can't be the right. And not only that, it could be the names don't reflect the person that they know in Chicago, because they wrote only the name that he's called in New York, where the get was written. So Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken makes a takana, shekosev, in such cases where he has two names, they should write Ish Ploni v'chol shum sheyesh lo, any name that he has. Now here we have a major machlokas rishonim. Tosfos, that's this top Tosfos here, says that the Bahag is of the opinion that he doesn't have to write another name. All he has to do is add v'chol shum, and we take the Mishnah literally. Just add v'chol shum sheyesh lo. Rabbeinu Tam disagrees, and he says, no, you have to write the additional name. If he has two names, both names have to be written in the get. And that's, I believe, how we pass it. Weiter in the Mishnah, Isha plonis v'chol shum sheyesh lo. Let's say a woman has two different names. We have to add these words, v'chol shum sheyesh lo mipnei tikkun olam, as we said before, so she could use the get in the makom ha-nesina as proof that this is her get. And no one's going to be motzi las and say, well, that's not a get. We don't recognize the name of the Baal or the name of the Isha here or the name of the city. And therefore, by adding v'chol shum, we solve that problem and we avoid any laws on the children if she gets married and so forth. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Sholchu le b'nei Medina Seyam l'Rav Gamliel. A question was sent from Chutz La'aretz, probably from Bavel, all the way to Rabbi Gamliel. B'nei Adam haba misham lekan. Somebody comes from your neck of the woods, let's say Eretz Yisrael to us, to Bavel, and Shmo in Eretz Yisrael, Yosef. Okay, fine. In Eretz Yisrael, he has he gets a Tudat Zahud, it says Yosef on. But currently over here in Bavel, they call him Yochanan. Or it's just the other way around. In Eretz Yisrael, he's known as Yochanan. But here in Bavel, Koren lo Yosef. How should the get be formulated in such a case? Now, the pashtus is that this statement of Shmuel is an exact duplicate, a repeat of what we had in the Mishnah. So there's going to be a machlokas rishonim here about what Shmuel is coming to add here that we wouldn't have derived from the Mishnah. We have the Ran. The Ran says that the Mishnah is talking about cases in which the Baal or the Isha has one name in Mokom Ksiva, another name in Mokom Hanesina, and in the get, only the name of Mokom Ksiva was written. And the get itself is kosher because it has the names of the Baal and the Isha. But l'chatchila, we should write the name not only of his Mokom Ksiva, but also the Mokom Nesina. or at least v'chol shum sheyesh lo. So therefore, there won't be any laws on this get b'di'eved if they didn't write the extra name of the makom nesina. The get is kosher. Oh, so that we know. Now comes along Shmuel and he says that if in the makom ksiva they use two names, they use the local name and also the name of the makom nesina, then if only one name was written in that case, even if they wrote the name of the makom nesina, the makom nesina is the main name that we want to use because that's where she'll get the get, and she'll use the get to prove that she was divorced. So he says that even if they write the name of the makom nesina, nevertheless, the get is not chal, and even b'di'eved she's not megureshes. The second interpretation is the Ran himself. The first interpretation was the Ran in the name of Yesh Omrim, and the Ran himself rejects this shot. And he says that Rabbi Yehuda is coming to explain the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Barishona Yamashani Shmo Shma. And it sounds like Mishana means there was a mistake in the name that was written. So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the Mishnah is not talking about a case like that. And even before the takana of Rabbi Gamliel, they would have passled such a get if the name was mistaken. But rather, we're talking about a case where there was a change in the names because he moved from one location to the other. Rabbi Gamliel was masaking that they should write both names, or v'chol shum sheyesh lo. Rav Ashi, when do we require adding to the get v'chol shum sheyesh lo, whether it means that exactly or the names itself? Who this chazik b'trei shmei? In the makom ksiva, they know about the fact that he has another name in the makom nesina. They're aware of that. But if they don't know that, then you could drop the. Don't even bother including v'chol shum sheyesh lo. And even if we clarify later on that he has another name, nevertheless the get is kosher. And the reason for this is, as long as they wrote in the get the name that's public knowledge in the makom ksiva, they don't know about any other name. That itself is considered shmo, and the get is written kedin. Amalei Rabbi Abel Rav Ashi. Rabbi Mori, Rabbi Loza Kaimikavose. So there are other Amoraim that agree to what you say, that there's no need to add v'chol shum sheyesh lo unless it's a case of a chazuki be betray shmei. So now the Gemara is going to quote a brisa. The brisa is made up of two parts. And Tanya Kavosei de Rav Ashi, the second part of this price is going to serve as a support for Rav Ashi, that there's a difference between Ichzuki b'trei shemi and Lo Ichzuki b'trei shemi. Haylo shtei noshim. A man is married to two women, Achas. One lives in Yehuda, the Achas lives in Golil, V'lo shnei shemos. And he, the Baal, has two names, Echad b'Yehuda. One name that is familiar in Yehuda. The Echad, another name that they call him in Golil. I guess he moved at some point in his life and he changed his name. Is V'gerish as Isha b'Yehuda b'Shmo b'Yehuda. So this sounds like, a very good thing. They did the right thing because he used the name in Yehuda and his wife is in Yehuda, for that wife that's in Yehuda. No. It's just the opposite. Why? The get was written in Golil. And the name that they incorporated into the get was the name that he uses in Yehuda, which is the place where the get was actually delivered. So the get was written on the name of the Makom Nesina, and the Makom Ksiva, which is Golil, he has a different name, and that different name of Makom Ksiva was not written in the get. Or alternatively, just flipping it around, they wrote the get as Ishto Shebagol B'Shmo Shebo Begol. So they wrote the Makom Nesina. They didn't write the Makom Yehuda, which is his Makom, which is the Makom Ksiva. Ein Megureshes. It's not a valid get. Right? So it seems that the Brisa is maintaining that you must incorporate the name of Makom Ksiva. Ein Megureshes Shigaretz Ishto Shebe Yehuda B'Shmo Shebo Nikra B'Yehuda. So it means that the get was delivered in Yehuda. That's the Makom Nesina. And that's his main name, as we said before. That's got extra chashivas, the name in Makom Nesina. V'shem Degol Imo. He's got to add also the name that he's known by in the Makom HaKsiva. Because although maybe you could argue that the Makom Nesina is the Ikar, but nevertheless, you have to include the Makom Ksiva. So again, getting back to Rav Ashi for a split second, is Chazik B'Trei Shmei means we know in the Makom Ksiva that he has another name in the Makom Nesina. However, the Marshal rejects this interpretation. I'm just trying to get to the punchline here. And the other interpretation of Ischazik B'Trei Shmei, that in the Makom Nesina, they recognize him with one name. In the Makom Ksiva, they recognize him with another name. And each place doesn't know about his other alias name. Now, Tosas says that this Gemara, this Brisa that's being quoted here, seems to support Rabbeinu Tam, that you have to write in the get the names, the other names that he has. It's not enough to just write Kol Shum Sheyesh Lo. Because the Brisa says Shem de Golil Imo, which sounds like you have to write the name of Golil, which is the Makom Nesina. Ves Isa Shebegolil Shmo Begolil, V'Shem de Yehuda Imo. Again, if we switch it around, then the Makom Nesina is the goal, and that's the Iker name, and he should also add the Makom HaKsiva, which is his Shem de Yehuda. Now, all that is fine and dandy, but we don't have any indication yet at this point, if we stop in the middle of the Brisa, to support Rav Ashi. Well, let's go on in the Brisa. Brisa continues and says, Yotzel Makom Acher. Now, the Baal finds himself in a third place. He's not in Yehuda, nor in Golil. And there, they decided that they would call him, or he decided that he would call him by the name that he's known by in Yehuda. Now, he is giving a divorce to his wife in Golil. So again, there are three different locations. There's a location where they're writing the get. There's a location where the Baal is located, and then there's a location where the Ish is located. The get is being written, as we said, in that third location, and they're using the name of the Makom HaBaal, which is the name of Yehuda. But the get is being delivered in Golil. The Geresh B'Echad Mehem, right? They wrote the get with the name Yehuda. That's his hometown, his name. Megoreshes. Now, the name that he's known by in Golil does not appear in the get. And that's the main name, as we said, the Makom Nesina. So there's really a pell over here within the Brisa, unless we introduce Rav Ashi, and that is that the Brisa seems to assume that the get is valid if they wrote the name of where the Baal is, that's called Shmo Yehuda, and they left out the name of Golil, which is the Makom Anasina, which is Zikar Hashem. So the Gemara immediately asks this question: V'Amar Shem the Golil Imo, right? That he's got a name in the Makom Ksiva, and you see clearly here that both names have to be written in the get, and yet in the Sefer of this price it says Megureshes. No, you must introduce the following distinction. That in the first case, we're talking about a situation of Ischazik. They knew in Yehuda that he has another name in Golil, and therefore we require that the name of Golil will also be included in the get. But in a case where he goes to a third location, Makom Acher, they don't know there that he has an additional name in Golil, and therefore the get is kosher shmamina. Ahid have a korele Miriam. Most people in a local town called her Miriam, Upurta, and the Mid called her Sarah. Amri Narda. By the way, on the basis of this next sugya we're going to learn, I was told by my friend Rabbi Shurin that his grandfather, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, was makpid never to give two names. So complicated and again. So in the mishpachos from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, everyone has only one name. I once met a guy who has 5 names, and his father had 3 names. All told 8 names. Anyway, so Amri Nardoi, since most of the city call her Miriam, Hashem Ha'ikri, her main name is Miriam, because we go Basarov. And in the get, we should write Miriam B'chol Shum Sheyesh. But we should not write Sarah B'chol Shum Sheyesh, because Sarah is the name which only the minority of the people know of. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on the bottom of Lamedal and Amid Beis. Ein Almon Nifras. Now we have a principle that when it comes to collecting a debt that was owed by Ruvain, but Ruvain is dead and you're collecting that debt from Chanoch ben Ruvain, who is a Yasom, is you cannot collect without a shvur. And if we apply that principle here to the case of Piron Ksuba, so with, let's say, the death of the husband, all those that are written in the Ksuba, right, inherit their father's nechasim, but she wants to collect her Ksuba. And if we apply the general principle, you can't be poreh from Nichsei Sovim without a shvua. But nimnu milashbia, for some reason, which is going to come up in the Gemara later on, they were hesitant to be mashbia, to impose a shvua. They were only choshesh for what's called a shvua shekef. Now, what shvua is being taken here? That I didn't collect any of my ksuba. There's no way the Yisrael would know whether their father, may rest in peace, had in his lifetime paid up the ksuba to his wife. Hiskin Ram Gamliel as Zaken. Now, she is in a bad state. She can't collect a ksuba without a shvu, and now they're not allowing her to say a shvu. So to address this question, Gamliel came up with a takana shehit noderes instead of shvu, a neder la yisom kol mashiyir. So the yisom could say, we want you to take a neder to the effect that you did not collect any of the ksuba. And the neder is konam mine menachos alai, mizonos alai. So we're talking about mizonos. And if she accepts upon herself such a neder, that in event that there was already a piron ksuba, she'll have to suffer the anguish of konam mine mizonos. In such a case, begova ksubas, she can collect her ksuba. We're going to evaluate her das. she'im kibla, davar ma micheshbon ksuba, if in fact she had collected part of the ksuba, she will not come back to be go from the Yisomim, because if she would do so, then that would be a kiyum of the neder, and she would be asur b'minei mazon. So that's a substitute for a shvua, and that's a neder. Another takana that was made, this Mishnah is listing takanos, and this was a takana not of Gamliel Azaken, but rather of Hillel Azaken. She'edim chotz ma'al haget. So the Gemara is going to try to analyze what was this takana of Hillel Azaken that Edim should sign on the get. And we could already anticipate that if we pass like Rav Lozer, Edim Masira Kar, so there's no need for Chasimas Edim, but the Chasimas Edim will be effective, even according to Rav Lozer, who holds Edim Masira Kar, when she wants to prove by showing this get that she received a get. And finally, the Mishnah concludes with another takana, and that's Hil Hiskin Pruzbal Mibnei Tikuno. So the Gemara asks the following: what are you telling me? You're telling me Ein Almona Nifras Minichsa Yisomim Ela B'Shvua? I mean, that's a principle that applies. Forget about an Almona. Every single time a Malva wants to collect from a Lova, and the Lova's gone, he's going to have to take a Shvua before he gets rights to collection. Ma'ir Yalmona Filu Kuli Almanami. And the Gemara answers, Almana itzrichle. There's an extra chiddush in the case of Almana, which doesn't exist in your Balchov model. And Salkit, I would have thought. And here we turn to Daf Lamed Hey. Mishum China is Akilu Rabbanon Gaba. We want to make sure that she wants to get married, and she doesn't want to get into this complex situation where she cannot collect her ksuba because her husband died. Is Akilu Rabbanon, the Rabbanon would make you that she doesn't have to take a shvua when she comes to collect her ksuba from the Yisomim. And all that is the Hamamim. Kamash Malon Lamaskana, they didn't introduce that leniency, and she needs a shvua. Okay, so we'll stop here on the top of Lamed Hey. And I'll take this opportunity to wish you a great day and Chodesh Tov. Thank you so much.